What is up, my aesthetic boys? It's Fresh, back with another video. Now, I know this is a ProRevenge video, but it might be a PettyRevenge video. That's what I'm gonna let you guys decide. Dishonest neighbor finds himself unable to sell his house. Years ago, my neighbor was trying to sell his house during the fall, and he was selling it for incredibly more than it was worth, almost 6 figures higher. To make the property seem worth that figure, he would wake up early in the morning and take a leaf blower and blow the leaves past his front lawn into our backyard and then some, making it seem like his front yard went all the way to our driveway and also included our beautiful tree older than all the homes in the area combined. We never had a backyard fence because his kids were my age and we'd all play on the swings attached to that tree together. Generally, we were all cool. My dad wasn't too keen on this because he didn't want to get in a property dispute with the new owners, so he found the official property lines, and guess what? His front lawn ended about 3 feet from his house. So my dad bought some little stakes with orange ribbons and hammered them into the ground to show where the actual property line was. Next day, they were gone, thrown into the woods that surrounds us. My dad fetched them, nailed them back in, and knocked on the door asking him to cut it out. Next day, same thing happened. They were gone once again, but this time with a passive-aggressive note on our door. My dad is a rather intimidating guy when frustrated, and he was apparently too scared to be confrontational. It said we need to just be cool with it and let him do his scam so he can sell the house. My dad then decided to up the ante and went to a hardware store and bought 4 12-foot iron rods, took out his ladder and used the backside of an axe to nail it about 8 to 9 feet into the ground, and then watered the grass or did something so it couldn't just be yanked right out. So now there were just 4 ugly rods poking out of the lawn with bright orange ribbon tied to the top. My family goes away for a weekend, came back Monday, and all 4 are gone, tossed into the woods, and our backyard in those 4 spots are trashed with little holes from where he spent hopefully a long time digging those bad boys up. Obviously, my dad was furious and he just silently stood there for about 20 minutes with a burning rage deep inside, and our entire family could tell he was scheming. He turned around, hopped into the car, and disappeared for hours, only to return with a tow truck coming behind him. He popped over to a junkyard, found essentially a frame of a car, and bought it for its worth in metal, and then had it shipped to his backyard, which he plopped just before the property line. My dad walked into our house like a great conqueror saying, "Let's see him throw that into the woods." The neighbor showed up later that afternoon, followed by prospective buyers who just stood in his driveway gawking at the junker 4 feet from the house. He tried to brush it off, and as soon as they left, he came over just yelling about how he was going to call the cops on us and home association for depreciating the value of his property, to which my dad said, "Sure, go ahead, and I'll let them know about what you've been pulling for the past few weeks." Eventually, they came to the agreement that the junker would leave the yard if he paid to have it removed and shipped away, and ever since then, he stopped messing with the yard and stopped messing with the leaves. Too long didn't read, neighbor was being a nuisance with the property line, so my dad found an immovable object to match his unstoppable force. This one seems like a pretty good combination of petty and pro-revenge. Yes, the dad went to fairly extreme and at times logistically sophisticated means to get revenge on a dishonest neighbor, but what was really accomplished? What is the distinction from pro-revenge to petty revenge here? Is it the skill with which the revenge is enacted, perhaps the means with which the plan is carried out, or even simply just the intent of the ordeal to begin with? I'll let you guys decide that one. Park in our driveway? I'll make your life a living hell. This happened when I was 17 and had just got my driving license. I live in a big house on a private plot of land next to a private school in the UK. Important later. The school had about 30 parking spots, which were all reserved for staff, and made all the school moms park on the street. At the first day back at school after the 6-week break, we had multiple parents park in our driveway as our electric gate was broken and allowed basically anyone onto our property. We asked these people to move and they complied, and we thought that that was the end of it. On to the next day, a new parent parks in our driveway for about a week and will never move when asked, causing a havoc for all my family's cars. On Monday of the second week that she did this, I had had enough of her blocking my car in and having to use my sister's. As always, she would not move, and so I hatched a plan. I moved my sister's, my mom's, and my dad's cars all around so that she was blocked in. She didn't notice as she was on her phone. 5 minutes later, her kid returns and gets in the mom's car, and she tries to leave before realizing what I had done. There was no way to get around this, so her choice was to get out, nearly bashing our front doors in and verbally abuse me. Eventually, I moved the car in front of her so she could leave. This was about 20 minutes after her child arrived, and she sped off and lost control on the gravel driveway and ended up scraping her car along my neighbor's brick wall. Safe to say she didn't return after. This story was short, sweet, and straight to the revenge, and a big plus in my mind at least. Unlike a large number of revenge stories on here, nobody was really worse off. There was a heavy dash of entitled parents in the story, as the mom certainly had no right to be in their private driveway and persisted because it was most convenient to her. While possibly embellished, I can definitely see a situation like this occurring in real life, and I can also see why that family normally uses an electric gate. County mower trimmed down our shrubs for no reason. Go ahead and try that again. When I was 7 or 8, my dad planted a row of shrubs along the front of the property. They started out as scrawny sticks, but fast forward a few years and they were a big, beautiful wall across the front lawn. My dad kept them pristine, perfectly rectangular, about 5 feet tall so that people could still see over them. Considering how much work my dad put into them, I'm sure you can imagine his dismay when he found one day that a large corner had been lopped off the top all along the road. After my dad found the corner cut off, he confronted the county mower who mowed the public areas around our house. "Why the hell did you cut down my shrubs?" "Because they were hanging over the road. Anything hanging over the road will be cut back." "What? No, they weren't. I keep these shrubs cut so they're only over my property. I'm not gonna fight you on this. You let them grow up like that, and I'll cut them down again." Fine. For those of you that don't know, shrubs grow pretty quickly. A few months later, the shrubs had made progress toward recovering, and my dad got an inkling that it wouldn't be long before the mower lopped them off again. So he did what any man would do to get revenge in that situation. He went to Home Depot and bought a bunch of rebar. Rebar is a very sturdy steel bar used to reinforce concrete. Rebar, reinforcing bar. And nothing short of a steel saw or cutting torch is going to get through one of those. My dad then proceeded to hammer the rebar into the ground so that it was about 2 inches under the edge of the shrubs. Then we waited. A few weeks later, we were sitting around watching TV when we heard the mower head our way. My dad muted the TV and sat on the edge of the couch, a giant smile on his face as he listened to the mower blades come on and then what sounded like glass shattering. He then got off the couch and headed outside, keeping the smile on his face as he walked down the front path. There were pieces of mower blades strewn about across the road, and 2 of the 3 blades on the mower nothing but nubs. "You destroyed my mower!" "No, I didn't. I made sure that rebar wasn't an inch over the road." "That's what you get for mowing down my shrubs." "The county will be charging you for those blades." "Feel free to have them give me a call so I can have them come out and see exactly what happened." They never called or sent a bill. The mower never touched our shrubs again, and those rebar were still in the shrubs when we sold the house 5 years later. Edit: for those worried about the danger of this, when I say the blades were strewn across the road, I mean along the 5 or 10 feet the mower traveled before he stopped. They broke off and fell to the ground rather than flying all over the place. We expected it to just chew up the blades, not break them, but it was worth the cleanup to see the look on the guy's face. The perfect way to catch someone in a dishonest act is by forcing them to acknowledge their own lie. Just calling them out, like in the case of the father and his cut shrubs, will often do nothing as the perpetrator maintains plausible deniability. However, once personally confronted with indisputable evidence of their falsehood, they are forced to either confess or retreat. Looks like this mower took the latter, though it certainly was worse for the wear by the time these shrubs had finished. So which do you guys think? Petty because it was all over some bushes, or pro because of the damage done in such a sneaky way? Shift lead has a bit of an ego, so I deflated it slightly. I work at a bakery and have for around 6 months. I really enjoy my coworkers and managers, but there's one shift lead who doesn't like me at all, even though I've tried talking and complimenting her all I get is a straight-faced, "Stop messing around and get back to work." Whatever, I try not to let her get me down. I was closing with her tonight, and policy is that the shift lead has to check over everyone before clocking them out so nothing is accidentally forgotten, and it's their fault if something is. Her favorite coworker, which I'll call FC, got to go early, and she didn't check her over for anything. Just smiled, hugged her, and waved her off while wishing her a good night and saying thanks. I noticed that FC forgot a large chunk of her closing duties. I was going to get the overtime and do it myself, but when I went to go get the shift lead and let her know, she says to me, "I know you're not done because this is way too quick, especially for you. Go back out there and triple check everything." Oof, okay girl. She makes me deep clean everything in my station, makes me fill up things to the brim to the point where it'll be a mess for morning people, but I do everything with a smile. By the time everything is to her standards, it's only me and her in the bakery because everyone else got to leave before me, which she's done before. She clocks me out and mumbles a deadpan, "Thanks, bye." I nod, go towards the door, and right before leaving through the front, get her attention, so she has to look up at the entire darkened layout and say, "Oh no, looks like FC forgot to stack the chairs, sweep, and vacuum. Well, good night," in the cheeriest voice I could. Felt so good. This might seem like a gimme of a story, but think about it for a second. Think about what the employee did, the planning involved, and ultimately the outcome. I think there's an argument to be made that this shift manager was worse off than some of the other people in these stories. Unless, of course, she was able to pick up overtime for fulfilling someone else's duties, in which case we might have the first confirmed sighting of an r/suicide by revenge, where the revenge backfires to the point of being beneficial to the victim. Neighbors run over our fence. Dad installed concrete fence that wrecked 8 of their cars. We live in a small private neighborhood, and the neighbors are related to us, more or less, distant relatives. Everybody here is a complete nutjob. They've been constantly arguing over decades before me or my brother were even born. Our property line is kinda like a square, and it is surrounded by road from 2 sides. Keep in mind that in one part of the road, we let our neighbors use 1 square meter of the land so they could use the road safer and not damage our property. This is crucial information. This road is made of gravel. The neighbors want my parents, and only my parents, to pay for the entire cost to lay an asphalt road. My dad and my mother are constantly fixing potholes for 90% of the road, so naturally our neighbors thought that they will pay for the asphalt road as well. Classic choosing beggars. Fast forward 20 years, the road remains gravel-ish. Nobody wanted to pay for the asphalt road. One day, my neighbors order a massive truck filled with tons of wood. The truck driver runs over our fence. Nobody wanted to pay for the damages. Our fence is made out of multiple bushes, trees, and a little bit of metal fence too. These plants were now completely destroyed and a part of metal fence completely bent. We had to replant these plants and place a new metal fence. My father told me this was not the first time this happened, but actually the 3rd. I couldn't believe it when I heard this. So this is where the revenge begins. My father is a police officer in the department where they mostly handle frauds, drug busts, etc. He knows the law well. He dug up on the property line marker and placed plastic barrels filled with rocks on our property. In the next 6 hours, 3 of our neighbors came knocking on the door because they hit our plastic barrels filled with rocks. They were angry and wanted to call the cops, but they never did, because everybody knew that little part of land was still our property. One neighbor in particular threatened my dad that he will throw a damn pickaxe at my father's back. Over the period of 1 year, these neighbors hit the barrels so much with their cars that the barrels are now worthless. My dad was furious and he changed his PettyRevenge into a ProRevenge. He cut some wood to use it as a mold. He then bought cement, sand, and metal poles. One peaceful afternoon, my father and I cemented that whole part of the land and placed some lovely flowers on top. So when they hit the concrete, they can smell our flowers of victory and, for them, defeat. As we expected, 5 neighbors in total wrecked their cars on the new fence and nobody came knocking on the door. TLDR, neighbors ran over our fence, did not want to pay. Dad installed a better fence that wrecked their cars. The classic, you cause a couple $100s of property damage to me and refuse to compensate me for it? Okay, I'll just go ahead and spend even more money for the express purpose of causing you monetary losses far greater than the ones you incurred on me. Think you know which sub this one comes from? Let me know. No worries. In high school, I worked at a popular chain craft store for a couple of years. I was 16 or 17, but I'm also 5'1" and looked like an actual child. One day, I was cashiering and a woman in either her 50s or 60s comes in. She's not particularly pleasant, but she's fine. She tells me that she's taken up crocheting and asks me if I know anything about it. Incidentally, my mom taught me how to crochet when I was a little kid, and I told her I did. She asked me a few questions, and I give her some answers, and she gives me a firm thank you. As I typically do, I respond, no worries. She then proceeds to absolutely eat into me about how that's not proper English, and some absolute baby boomer BS about how millennials and their made-up words and how I was at my job and I should speak correctly. I just nod politely, not in the mood to interact with this human crossover between Mrs. Claus and the actual devil. I think this angered her more, and she purses her non-existent lips into what can only be described as an angry butthole, and repeats her main points again, SparkNotes version. I shouldn't speak like an illiterate at work, etc. Whatever, lady. I've finished scanning her items and coupons, and of course she had coupons, and I happily tell her her total. She puts her card in the machine, I put the receipt in the bag, yada yada, and hand her the bag, telling her to have a wonderful day. She gives me a half-assed thank you. I smile. I beam. I absolutely transcend into another realm. No worries. Now, I'm not gonna even bother including a poll for this because it's so obviously PettyRevenge. There's nothing particularly professional about it except for the fact that she was at work, but when she said she transcended to another realm, boy, she was not kidding. That's some next level thinking on your feet in an absolutely perfect way to send this woman right back out into the world that she came from. You know, honestly, I'm not sure which description I liked more. The crossover between Mrs. Claus and the actual devil, or the fact that when she got angry, this old woman's mouth looked, and I quote, like a literal angry butthole. Without any other knowledge of the situation, however, I can attest that both seem like they could be fairly accurate. On a last note, I really hope that you guys liked this new format for videos. Now, I'm not going to be doing this for every video and certainly not even every storytime video, but I thought it would be interesting to add a little bit of an interactive component that I hadn't really seen done before. I've seen polls being used in these kinds of Reddit videos, but not to determine what subreddit similar stories could be from, so I hope you guys enjoyed it. Links to all of the stories in the original subreddits are in the description. Let me know down in the comments how you did. Thank you to everyone who watched this video. Be sure to subscribe for more daily Reddit content. Drop a like if you liked the video, and I will see you all tomorrow.